Welcome back into the Sean podcast. I'm the Big Ush. Go ahead, get your tailgate started. Because Cat Daddy.
There you go.
What's on your mind?
Any given Saturday. How can you not love college football? Like, this weekend delivered some exciting, edge of your seat, white knuckle games. Like, the SEC treated us to several thrilling games. The Big 12 treated us to thrilling games. The Big 10 treated us to thrilling games. And we saw survival. We saw instant classics. And you know what else we saw? We saw chaos. Yes.
But let's get down to it. So the first game that we were looking at, Stanford and Arizona State. Stanford didn't stand a chance.
They didn't. And I was picking Stanford to win this one. You were picking Arizona State, so that was clearly wrong. Because I'm thinking Stanford normally finds a way to stay in the game, but they couldn't stop Arizona State's running game. They gave up, 255 and 3 touchdowns on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And Stanford's offense couldn't take advantage of any opportunities they were given. They gave up the run. Their quarterback, Tanner McKee, ended up throwing for 350 and a touchdown, but he also threw 3 interceptions. You don't win the game by turning the ball over.
No, you do not.
So,
all right, so next up, Georgia beat the piss out of Auburn. I ain't got no other way to phrase it. Auburn didn't stand a chance.
yeah, there's no magic for your boy Bo Nix this weekend. Georgia's defense led the way. I think Auburn was
turned into a pumpkin.
Auburn was the first team, though, to exceed 300 yards of offense against Georgia, and they only did that because they had garbage time passing at the end of the game when they put TJ Finley in. But it just shows that Auburn's passing game is lacking, and I think it might be missing weapons like Seth Williams and Anthony Schwartz, who went to the pros last year. Bo Nix is back there. He doesn't have a trusted receiver to throw to, and that could be some of the reasons for their struggles. But Nakobe Dean, he had a pretty nice interception in the first quarter. I got my eyes on him.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, next game up I'm going to talk about. The Michigan Wolverines had a little bit of a scare. Just saying, Nebraska made it close.
They did, but I think that's something I was expecting. Yeah, I figured in Lincoln, you're thinking that Nebraska is going to put up a fight. They may not have a very good record this year, but they're going to give you a fight. What I like watching, though, I like watching more and more Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah.
Love watching him.
Next. Oh, go ahead.
Now, I just want to note that Michigan has ridden the backs of their defense and their running game this whole year.
Yeah, they're going to be tested.
It's time that they step up their passing game, and I don't think Cade McNamara is the answer for Michigan. Granted, I don't know who the other option or answer would be, because you're thinking he threw for 255 yards. That was his season high. That brings his per game average up to 164 yards per game. Right? Wrap your mind around that. He's only averaging 164 passing, even with this 250. Some of his passes, especially some of those incompletions, they weren't good throws. They should have been turnovers. he needs to put them in a position to win the game. It's just going to be, how soon does he become the liability? And what does Harbaugh do at that point? Because the second half of their schedule is going to really show what they're made of, because it's going to include road games against ranked teams like Michigan State and Penn State, another road game against a surprising Maryland team, and they finish the season when Ohio State comes to Ann Arbor. They need that passing game to start clicking, because if it doesn't, they can't rely on their defense this whole time.
All right, so one that was an upset, those BYU Cougars ran to the Boise State Broncos, and their old little foe came up, knocked them down the peg.
They did. You're thinking BYU was 5-0 coming to this game, and I think their magic has run out. Boise State comes away with the upset, but looking back at BYU, I kind of had the feeling that they were overrated, because I'm thinking, how are they winning these games, right? They shouldn't be winning all of these games, but somehow they got the magic to keep rolling. But when I'm looking back at the games, they have a few things in common. One thing is they're limiting turnovers on offense, and two, Tyler Algier is in beast mode. But this weekend was a different story, because BYU had 4 turnovers. They lost 3 fumbles. They had an interception. BYU as a team only had 111 rushing yards. 73 of those belonged to Tyler Algier. And this was against one of the worst run defenses in the nation, because Boise State's been giving up on average 191 yards a game. And I'm thinking, man, Tyler Algier's going to eat. He didn't. But for me, a big difference is the run blocking for BYU. I don't know what happened to it. And sometimes I think that the run blocking has been overshadowed by how well Tyler Algier's been playing, and it's really kind of hidden some of those deficiencies.
Maybe.
But I've said my obligatory Tyler Algier 3+ times, so let's commit that to memory. Repetition, Tyler Algier.
All right, next up, Notre Dame had a bit of a scare. Almost had their second loss. Told you VTech was going to play them close.
That was a close game. That was... Let me find my notes for that one real quick. I got it somewhere. There we go. The first note I wrote was, Notre Dame broke Virginia Tech's heart in this one, because Virginia Tech should have won this. Notre Dame comes away with the victory, but this game continued to show us that the quarterback position is a liability. No matter who they have in there, it's a liability, and Brian Kelly doesn't have anybody in there who can play a full game at quarterback, because you had Jack Cohen who started, he gets pulled. You have Tyler Buckner go in, he does well, but then he starts to struggle with extended action, and then what happens? End of the game, Brian Kelly does the unthinkable, puts Jack Cohen back in the game. And at this point you're thinking, Brian Kelly's either lost his marbles or he's a genius. Very fortunate against all odds. Jack Cohen leads him to a comeback. But even after the game, Brian Kelly wasn't able to commit to who's going to be a starting quarterback moving forward. So Notre Dame, I can't remember where they're ranked. It's in the teens, but I still think that teens might be too high for them.
All right, so next up, I got 2 teams to talk about till we get to the real fun stuff. So Michigan State. Only reason why I mentioned Michigan State, Kenneth Walker III, another 200-yard game. Good Lord. This kid, is he as good as it sounds?
I'm going to say yes. I call him K-Dub3. That's my nickname for him, because we're tight like that. 223 yards, another 200-yard game. But he was doing well at Wake Forest before.
Right.
But now Michigan State's he has Big Ten, maybe more exposure with the Big Ten, but he's definitely taking advantage of the opportunity. So he shot himself way up the draft board.
All right, next up, KU. This team a mirage, or are they really good?
Kentucky has been one of the better defensive teams in the SEC this season. And I want to believe in Kentucky. Now, what's the bad thing about Kentucky?
Offense.
Well, I mean the offense, but
in the SEC.
Who do they draw this week?
Well, we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. Okay. We'll get to that. But I like where Kentucky's going. They're very hot. They're a hot team like Arkansas was a couple weeks ago.
Oh, there's your little preview. All right. Anyways, coming up. Speaking of Arkansas, since you want to do a transition here, we're going to one of probably the most fun game of the week. Arkansas
one of
Ole Miss, and it was this was a heck of a track meet. There was some NFL talent on display. Treylon Burks, Matt Corral. And, I mean, neither of these teams disappointed. There's Sanders on both sides of the ball. But Ole Miss got the victory 52-51 because Arkansas didn't want to go to overtime. They was like, we going to do that 2-point conversion. And they did not convert.
No, maybe that's where Dan Campbell got its inspiration from.
Yeah.
Same results. They failed Dan Campbell got the 2-point conversion.
He got
his. That's wrong. But Ole Miss survived this game. I don't think Ole Miss won, and I don't think Arkansas lost. I think this is just a matter of we just ran out of time, and Ole Miss survived this game. It was really exciting.
Sometimes you just gotta survive.
They combined for 1,287 yards of total offense. Nearly 1,300 yards between two teams. Matt Corral, Ole Miss needed a big day from him because you're thinking Jerrion Ely didn't suit up for the game due to a concussion. They were missing their number 2 wide receiver, Jonathan Mingo. And Corral didn't disappoint. He hit, 14 of 21, 287. He got 2 touchdowns in the air. Another 94 yards on the ground with 2 scores. And let me tell you, those 2 rushing scores were fun to watch because his first rushing touchdown, he was channeling his inner Derrick Henry. Trucking people, plowing over him. He wasn't going to be denied.
And the second one, was that Antonio Brown he channeled?
He didn't channel. He got a karate kick to the face and still scored a touchdown.
Oh, no. The Antonio Brown kicked the guy. He's the one who kicked the guy and kept running.
Yeah, he kicked the punter and kept going. Yeah. But what do we see from Matt Corral? He showed us good decision-making. He showed good arm strength, good mobility, and he's putting these things together consistently. It's really good tape he's putting on this year, so he stays my QB1. But I also want to highlight Treylon Burks. Let's not forget about Treylon Burks because he was looking unstoppable in that game. Continues to show us the talents.
You got me to pause right now. You said QB1. I'm sorry. Hard for me to truly say QB1 when you got Magic Man Malik Willis out there. I'm sorry. Like, every time I want to put Matt Corral at QB1, I see a Malik Willis highlight. That's like, that ain't possible. Regular humans don't do that. You're an alien. You were built in a lab somewhere. And somehow the reason why you haven't gone to one of these other schools is you were adjusting to human life. You're not a real human.
He is not. What do we see from Malik Willis? He led Libertyville to a convincing win, and he sprinkled in some really impressive plays in there. He did. He put up impressive numbers. He threw for 222, 2 touchdowns, another 80 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. Incredible talents, but he still has work to do. He had 3 interceptions, and granted, these are his first 3 interceptions of the year, but when you're going against a team like Middle Tennessee State, you shouldn't be throwing 3 interceptions.
I got one name for you, Josh Allen.
Josh. And then he also absorbed another 3 sacks, which brings the season total up to 18 over a 6-game span. And I mean, it's really 5 because he played Campbell's opening game and Campbell couldn't touch him. So he has 18 sacks over 5 games, and I think that high sack number is it just there's just not. Josh Allen or Zach Wilson, who do we see? But maybe they're the same because Josh Allen's career started off a little rough too.
That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying is Josh Allen went to Wyoming, had a rough year at Wyoming because of the talent level around him. I see if you get Malik Willis in the right situation like Josh Allen went to, and they can build up around. I see more Josh Allen with Malik Willis than I do see Josh Allen with Zach Wilson. Personally, that's me. But
do you know what the good thing is? In less than 4 weeks, Malik Willis and Liberty travel to Oxford, Mississippi to take on Matt Corral and Ole Miss. We could see them go head to head in less than 4 weeks.
We'll see some fun.
We
One
better.
of those teams is more talented than the other, but so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyways, moving on to 2 teams that were seemingly evenly matched as the Red River Showdown. I don't even feel right saying that. The alliteration isn't there. But anyways, my showcase player is from this game. He didn't start the game, but he came in and led that team to a victory because Spencer Rattler is not the guy. I'm sorry, just not. Spencer Rattler, all the tools in the world, but I mean, you gotta have it between the ears, and he's just not. He's not even a college quarterback, let alone an NFL quarterback. And Mr. Caleb Williams came in and showed more. And those, 2.5 quarters of football, then Spencer Rattler has shown like his whole career so far. And that's a sad statement to say. It's so sad that they've been like doing like James Bond type stuff to practice this week because they don't want to put it out there that Spencer Rattler ain't starting no more. And it's just like, if he is starting, you're going to have a revolution at that school because Texas should not have lost this game. Texas somehow allowed Mr. Caleb Williams to come in and beast mode them. Any thoughts on this, Sean?
I have a lot of thoughts in this game. There were 3 really exciting games that I saw this weekend. One of them was a game that we had just talked about, which was the Ole Miss game. This one was up there in the top 3. You're thinking,
I say there's 4 exciting games, but go ahead.
All right, well, we'll see. Oklahoma comes in undefeated. I mean, they've been undefeated since that thrilling quadruple overtime win against Texas last year in the Red River Showdown rivalry shootout, whatever you want to call it.
Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. While this game may not have been as exciting as 4 overtimes, it was still an instant classic. Just when I want to say Texas is back, Texas finds a way to fall short.
25 points in the 4th quarter.
And we were both wrong picking Texas, but I believe
We
that
almost weren't.
if Spencer Rattler had played the entire game, I think
Yes.
Texas would have won. There wouldn't have been a question about that.
This was almost the happiest I was being wrong. Once they put the kid in, I was like, yeah, let's go. Oh,
Yeah.
you.
And you're thinking, how inexcusable is it for Texas coaching to have lost that game? How can you allow Kennedy Brooks, as talented as he is, how can you allow him to run for a 33-yard walk-off touchdown when they were just trying to get themselves in field goal position?
It's nonsense.
This is a huge game for Texas on an annual basis, and losing this game in this fashion, I think, is going to be embarrassing for the team. So that's my first thought. My second thought is this was a game of Spencer Rattler versus himself. Coming into the season, he was my number 1 pick preseason. He was my number 1 quarterback. He was my Heisman favorite. And
I was skeptic.
And I was so wrong. He wasn't even QB1 in this game. He wasn't even QB1 on his own team.
He wasn't even QB2.
He hasn't been able to hit the deep shot. His decision making has regressed, and the wheels have just fallen off the wagon for him. And I don't think there's any sign that it can be fixed. At least not at Oklahoma. Now, assuming that Caleb Williams draws the starts moving forward, and we've seen that Spencer Rattler is not a first-round draft pick, does he enter the transfer portal?
I'd say transfer portal, personally. No way he enters a draft.
He shouldn't, because he is nowhere near a day one talent.
The question is, where can he go to get fixed? Because OU's the place that people go to get fixed.
It's going to be, I think it's going to be hard for him to go to any team with his character, because even when you go back and you watch that high school series, QB1, he displayed less than ideal character and behavior. So you're thinking some teams got to have a good coach, a good locker room to make sure he stays in line and he can stay the leader that he is. Now imagine his character and behavior were up to par. How would he look with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss?
Yeah, we'll see.
But we'll see. That's like far down the line.
What's your third?
Next thought is Caleb Williams. What a way to introduce yourself to the college football world, the Red River rivalry showdown, shootout, whatever you want to call it. He displayed the confidence that Spencer Rattler has been lacking this whole year. He gave new life to that offense that was struggling and stalling under Spencer Rattler. But let's not allow these Oklahoma quarterbacks to dominate the entire conversation, because there's two Texas players I want to talk about real quick. Bijan Robinson.
Probably the best back in the nation.
An Oklahoma defense that had not given up 100 yards on the ground to a single rusher all year gave up 137 yards to Bijan Robinson, who has looked impressive. I can't wait until we talk about him more and more in our preseason scouting series when he becomes draft eligible close to that range, because he is really fun to watch, and he should be in top 5 Heisman candidates at this point. He should be there. The second Texas player I want to talk about, DeMarvion Overshown. Moved from safety to linebacker. He plays in space pretty well. He can fill that linebacker safety hybrid role that some teams covet. He can play the run. He's got that safety background. During our off-ball linebacker series, he was just outside of my top 5. Quietly, he's been showing up. He really showed out this weekend. He had that sack on Spencer Rattler, and Rattler didn't even know it was coming. And on the next play, he goes out there and blocks a punt. And he had like 45 armbands on. I don't know. But he's looking better.
Oh, all right. So next game. I think this game was exciting if you like defense, which I do. And it was one of the big games of the week. Penn State went to Iowa, and we had a bit of a game here.
That's true. There were 4 exciting games. Yeah,
they controlled the game for majority of the game. My spotlight player was in this game, and he played well. Jaquan Brisker, I believe he had an interception, and he played very well, but wasn't well enough to get the victory. Iowa defeats Penn State 23-20, but it was a good game. Sean, any thoughts?
I got a couple thoughts for this one too, so I apologize in advance for that.
You better apologize to them.
You know, when you're watching college football, you want to see 1,200 yards of offense. You want to see 50 points being scored by both teams. You're watching the NFL, you want to see a little bit more defense. But you're absolutely right. This game gave us what college football can sometimes be lacking, which is the defensive battles. And sometimes those defensive battles, they don't look pretty. And this was not a pretty game for either side, because Iowa's offense was very slow, very sluggish to start the game, and they had to come from behind to edge out Penn State, which is even more impressive considering how well Penn State's defense has been playing this year. And they played their hearts out. I think this is another game where it's not as if Iowa won and Penn State lost. I think it's one of those games where Iowa survived this.
Yeah.
But pretty doesn't matter in the win-loss column. A win is a win.
Especially when it's a top 5 win.
Yeah, two top 5 teams.
right.
Penn State's offense didn't do themselves any favors after Sean Clifford exited the game. Taquan Roberson made a relief appearance, but he looked overwhelmed the entire time with that Iowa defense, and that's a big reason why Iowa won. If Clifford's in there for a full game, I don't think Iowa walks away with the win. My last point is going to be my spotlight player, who was Penn State wide receiver Jahan Dotson. I was looking for a big game from him, a good game from him. His stat line reads 8 receptions, 48 yards, 0 touchdowns.
No, that's not enough.
No. 17 targets. He had 17 targets. It wasn't as if he had played poorly. He was just not able to be more productive and do more against an Iowa secondary, but he was getting open, creating separation. But the Iowa defense was just shutting down plays. The quarterbacks couldn't do anything for Penn State. 3 of those targets to Dotson ended up in interceptions.
All right, before we get to the big game, go ahead and talk about your showcase player. It just wasn't worth. It wasn't a game worth mentioning for me, but go ahead and talk about your showcase player.
Showcase player is going to be from the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. We got Isaiah Likely.
He did ball out.
Arkansas State was one of the worst scoring defenses in the nation. They were giving up over 45 points per game, and Isaiah Likely nearly scored 45 points by himself. But this isn't the first time you heard me talk about Isaiah Likely. If you remember, he was my number 3 tight end during our summer scouting series. What were some of the things I said about him before? I said he was a little on the smaller side for a tight end. Next level, he may be big slot tight ends, purely receiving threats, sneaky big playability. What did we see this week? Sneaky big playability. 2 60-plus yard touchdowns, including one that was 99 yards. He was beating the defense at all levels. His day ended with an 8-reception, 232-yard, and 4-touchdown line. I mean, the first 5 weeks of the season, he totaled 19 receptions for 281 yards, 4 touchdowns. So he nearly doubled his production in one single game, granted against Arkansas State, but he put himself back on the map. It was good to see him put up a good game.
All right, so next up, it is the big game. So Bama went into Texas A&M. Bryce Young threw for 369 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brian Robinson ran for 147 yards. Jamison Williams had 10 catches for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Sean, tell me how Bama lost this game then.
Alabama found themselves in an early deficit. They were trailing by 14 points at the halftime. Somehow, the quarterback I've come to loathe, Zach Calzada, put together a career day. This is a game where he just came out and he played the hero. He led Texas A&M on a game-winning drive. Their kicker just sailed one through the uprights as time expired. This is going to be the lone highlight in Texas A&M's season because it's been a disappointing season. Certainly the crowning achievement for Zach Calzada. He chose a great day to have a career game. For me, it was not that the Alabama offense was struggling, but they were kind of struggling. Bryce Young, he had a good stat line, but there were several dropped passes in there. Outside of left tackle Evan Neal, their offensive line wasn't up to par against that Texas A&M defense because the Aggies got that guy DeMarvin Leal on the other side, who racked up 7 tackles. He was creating constant pressure throughout the game, and pressure is something that Bryce Young is not used to yet. He was rushing his throws when he got pressured. When he was pressured on 19 dropbacks, only converted 6 of those passes for 61 yards. So maybe being pressured was affecting the decision making. There were some drops mixed in, and I'm not sure what Bill O'Brien was trying to dial up by calling 3 consecutive pass plays when you have 1st and goal inside the 5-yard line
Yeah,
But maybe
well,
that's a
there's-
different conversation because I don't know.
All right, moving on to next week. Like I said, we spot choose our games here. But the first one, possible upset. Like you said, this team needs to keep the gas pedal going. UCF goes to see Cincinnati. Is this an upset, Sean?
It shouldn't be. No, I have Cincinnati winning. If Cincinnati wants to stay in the college football playoff race, they have to win and win convincingly. That should be their sole focus.
So you say they cover?
What's the spread?
20 and a half.
They need to. They need to.
All right, the next game up, fun matchup. Oklahoma State travels to Texas to face Texas. Texas is actually favored by 5.5. I got Oklahoma State. They stay undefeated.
So Texas had their heart broken by an Oklahoma team. And I keep wanting to say Texas is back,
But they ain't.
but
But they're not.
they may not have beat Oklahoma Sooners. I want them to get the win. I'm going to will Texas to victory this week against
Ain't
Oklahoma State. It's not looking good, but
Is the reincarnation of Vince Young coming back?
you have Casey Thompson. Got
Is the
Bijan
reincarnation
Robinson.
of Vince Young coming back? No.
No.
So they lose. All right. Next up, we got possible upset. Auburn going to Arkansas to face, the Razorbacks. Who you got? Razorbacks.
It's Arkansas. It's Arkansas. Auburn has not done much to impress me that they deserve to be thought of as highly as they are. Their play seems to be disappointing this season, especially on offense. And Arkansas, outside of the whooping that they just endured.
Yeah. All right. So this one, upset alert. Baylor. Well, BYU is coming to face those Baylor Bears. And BYU coming off a tough loss. Who you got?
Oh, I want to go Tyler Algier.
This is my spotlight game. I got Tyler Algier, so I got to go with those Cougars.
I'm going for the Baylor Bears. I think that the running game, as talented as Tyler Algier is, I think that we started to see some of those holes against Boise State.
Next up, we have NC State traveling to Boston and to face those Eagles. Who you got?
NC State. That was took much more time to. Yep, NC
I'm gonna
State.
go Boston College. I think Boston College gets the upset. This is my upset alert. All right, another upset alert. The big game. This is where you prove if you belong or not, KU or UK. University of Kentucky goes to Georgia to face them Bulldogs. Yeah, I'm sorry. Y'all still not there yet. Georgia's going to win.
I agree. Georgia's gonna win. I do, but just think how upside
I don't think
down.
Georgia covers, though.
How upside down. I mean, it's what 23, 24.
23.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're gonna cover, but how upside down would it make the world if the number one team in the country lost back-to-back weeks?
Woo.
Alabama just fell, and then
It would be fun.
Georgia falls, because in this game I have my spotlight player, because we know how good Georgia's defense is, and my spotlight player is not on Georgia. It's going to be Kentucky offensive line Darian Kennard, because this is going to be arguably the best talent he goes against, because you're going to have NFL talent against NFL talent. Who does Georgia have on their line? Jordan Davis. They got Adam Derson. There's a lot of talent there in Georgia, and I think this is really going to be a resume tape for Darian Kennard.
Let's see how it goes. All right. So that's all we got for you for college football this week, folks. Sean, any words of wisdom?
No, I was going to say something witty about Spencer Rattler, but I think I'll hold it. No.
All right.
Not going there.
My words of wisdom is you have to keep working. You can't just rest on your laurels. You can't just think you are naturally gifted at something. You always have to work, because there's always somebody behind you working harder. So you got to keep it going.
Spencer Rattler.